Om. Om. Ganana Antva Ganapati Havamakhe Kavin Kavinamupamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anasranvan Utibhissida Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajinivati Dhinamavitrayavatu Ganeshaya Namaha Saraswatyai Namaha Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shambhave Namaha Namaste astu bhagavan Vishveshwaraya Mahadevaya Trayambakaya Tripurantakaya Trikagnikalaya Kalagnirudraya Nilakantaya Mrityunjayaya Sarveshwaraya Sada Sivaya Sriman Mahadevaya Namaha Namo Dundubhyaya Chakhananyaya Cha Namo Drishnave Cha Pramrushaya Cha Namo Dutaya Cha Prahitaya Cha Namo Nishangine Cheshu Dhimate Cha Nama Stikshne Shave Cha Yudhine Cha Nama Swayudhaya Cha Sudhanvane Cha Nama Srutyaya Cha Pathyaya Cha Nama Katyaya Cha Nipyaya Cha Nama Sudyaya Cha Sarasyaya Cha Namo Nadyaya Cha Vaishantaya Cha Nama Kupyaya Cha Vatyaya Cha Namo Vashyaya Cha Vashyaya Cha Namo Meghyaya Cha Vidyutya Cha Nama Idhriyaya Cha Tapyaya Cha Namo Vatyaya Cha Reshmiyaya Cha Namo Vastavyaya Cha Vastupaya Cha Om Shanti 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 Bismillah Rahman Rahim Kulahu Allahu Ahad Allahu Samad Lam Yalid Balam Yullad Lam Yakullahu Kufavan Ahad La ilaha illallah Allah Allah La ilaha illallah Allah Allah La ilaha illallah Allah Allah Let us all be together. Let us all be nourished together. Let us all work together with great vigor. May our studies shall shine and illumine our intellects. May we not hate each other. Let there be peace, peace, and peace. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Sairam, Hari Om, Namaste, Eid Mubarak. We are studying the seventh Anuvakam of Sri Rudram and trying to connect to the dimension of identity. Today, this weekend is celebrated across the world by many of our Muslims, brothers and sisters, celebrating the Eid. As part of this celebration, innumerable number of animals are sacrificed in the name of God. But the message and the implicit and explicit direction of the voice of God through this Hazrat Muhammad, another instrument that lost its identity in executing the word of God. Just like Jesus the Christ unconditionally executed the will of the Master. And that is what we are studying in this Anuvakam. There is much more deeper level of losing identity, but I don't want to lose you all in too much of getting into that level of deeper non-duality, because that has to be truly experienced and cannot be explained. But to understand in the relative realm of what we see around us, how the instruments that live, truly lived, live, and will live a spiritual life of being in the present without identifying. And last week we went through the first 6 or 7 yajus in this Anuvakam, where it starts with that fundamental call that happens deep within the core, the call. And when you study the lives of the greatest ones, then you see that this call somehow happens at different, there is no time, space, dimension on when this call happens, how this call happens. So it's that when that call happens, like a Bhagavan Ramana, that call happens and that experience in that room that he goes through, that call happens to a Ramakrishna, the call happens to a Muhammad, the call happens to a Moses, the call happens to a Jesus, the call happens to a Hanuman, the call happens to so many divine instruments that are now in executing that call, Dundubhyayacha, Hananyayacha, Dhrishnavecha, Pramrushayacha. And in executing this call, follow the master, face the devil, finish the game. This face the devil is what is sacrificed, and that is the celebration of the Eid. And this devil that is sacrificed, there are so many of these devils that are fundamentally, of course, manifested as the 10. And of course, the subtle manifestations that happen underneath each of those, innumerable. 16,000 is the number that surrendered to Bhagavan Krishna. 16,000. The 16,000 does not really represent the women and all of that we have been bombarded with, and then the interpretations around those. The 16 are the manifestations of the different phases of the mind or the moon, in which all these different vagaries of identification are occurring. Yes, now when we ask the question, oh man, this 16,000 is way too many. How do I distill and bring them to what is the most absolutely two that are important for identification? The first is the word or the name, and the second is the form or the shape. This is it. And the name, as the word, is what you get tied to in identification. The name as calling this body something, some identification of this body, and the identification as it relates to some that are important for maintaining social order, and then the identification that are given in the context of doing our daily trifles. This is it. These are the fundamental words with which we identify the world. And ironically, ironically, it is we get so much identified with this word that we cannot see anything but for that word. You cannot think anything but for those words. Yes. And last week, I requested all of you to look at how many different ways you can identify. Dundubhyaya cha hananyaya cha, drishnave cha, pramrushaya cha. But for the one this call comes, the very first sacrifice that needs to happen, the very first sacrifice is this identification of you are this and that in doing God's work, because none of that absolutely doesn't matter in doing his work. When the consciousness calls and now you are connected to this one in being, none of that really matters, because if you identified yourself, you cannot be doing that work. And so, therefore, this is also from a practical, relative world of materialistic experience. If you simply identified yourself with the work you do and you're so engrossed in it, and you think that I am an engineer, therefore I shall live and die as an engineer. I am this, I am a physicist, I am a chemist, I am a biochemist, I am this, I am that. And then it's it truly, you become so much pigeonholed that you are now like a frog in the well, and you can't see any world beyond that identification with your own profession, and then you are tied to that forever, and therefore you can't open your heart. And therefore Bhagavan very beautifully gives this experience of incredible ways how the divine can, when you choose to do his work, you are nothing and you are nobody. And then out of his pure grace and nothing but that, You don't have to go read books. You don't have to go seek anybody. You don't have to go do anything, because now when he says, thou shalt do it, then that means he is doing it. And now you lost your identity. Dundubhyaya cha hananyaya cha. Now, drishnave cha pramrushaya cha. Then you truly become the one who is carrying the work and the message, dutayacha, prehitayacha, for the sake of the good of everything, the whole universe. Nishangine, nishanginecha, ishudhimatecha. Then you shall carry all your faculties only for the sake of doing this work. And therefore, Bhagavan has written this beautiful, beautiful prayer for his students, which I'm sure most of you know. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness of devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work for Thee. Then when you become an instrument, the instrument has to be usable by the user, no? So the instrument cannot be simply saying that, oh, now chalta hai, sab bhagwan karega, God will do everything, God is everything, I am nobody, nothing. All of this stuff that we say is meaningless, truly meaningless, unless you are truly an instrument that are worthy, that are fit, that are ready. This is what the next few suktas are saying, yajus are saying. What it is saying is, yes, now you surrender. You are ready to do his work. But if you are, if as an instrument, you are not a usable instrument, then what happens? You are useless instrument. The whole point of the instrument is to be ready to be used. And therefore nishanginecha ishudhimatecha. You got to be fit with your intellect and your mind that are laser focused, tikshneshavecha, ayudhinecha. Every every single aspect of this instrument is perfect. And now a lot of people throw this other kind of filler. Now, if it is all his will and if it is his stuff, who am I to sharpen my intellect? Who am I to share? He will sharpen himself. He will. No, no, no. Don't get, don't get trapped into this whole thing of surrender, thinking that I am a useless fellow, but yet I'm ready for him to be instrument. Now that is misplaced spirituality. It is still that ego self that is existing within us. It has, when it loses its identity, it doesn't mean that it has lost its attributes to be useful. Therefore, spiritual people are not useless people. They're not fit for nothing people. They're actually much sharper intellects and much sharper minds that are now deployed. Tikshneshavecha yudhinecha. Then the next five suktas. The first part is losing the identity in the context of the name. The second part is losing the identity in the context of the form. If you take a rock and it has a shape and it has a form, but when it turns into water, it has no specific shape or a form. It will take the form of the container. isn't it? Therefore, now we say Swayudhaya cha Sudhanvane cha. Until then are the faculties. Then, when these faculties are sharp, they are energized, they are focused. They are focused, and now they have to flow. They have to now flow. They cannot be stagnated. And therefore, this flow that is happening is associated with what we see outside as the water that flows. And how does this water flow, generally speaking? To From one point to another point, relentlessly, relentlessly flowing, unconditionally flowing. And when it is flowing, there will be narrow paths, there will be wide paths, there will be rocks and boulders and forests, there will be fields and towns and villages, there will be trash, mud, slums, all kinds of stuff. But it shall not stop flowing. It shall not stop executing the will of the divine. The beautiful story of Muhammad. I absolutely know you all can relate to when we are talking about this. How this, the whole essence of Allah Malik, the divine master, Allah Malik. This is the mantra that Bhagavan Baba said all his life, Allah Malik. So when we're looking at this identity and now losing its form now, losing its rigidity, now became agile. Then what happened? Srutyayacha means narrow trails. Pathyayacha, great highways, beautiful paths. Katyayacha, dribbling streams of water. Nipyayacha, torrents of water flowing. Sudhyayacha, muddy waters. Sarasyayacha, saras, in lakes. Nadhyayacha, nadi, in rivers. Vaishantayacha, in reservoirs. I really hope you are seeing all of this. You are seeing this, how profound in the context of taking that complex aspect of name and form now and putting in these yajus with everything that you are now seeing outside. There is nothing, there is no philosophy here. The river flows, the water flows. When it is flowing, Jodi tore dakshine kevnashe tobe akla chalo re, akla chalo, akla chalo, akla chalo, akla chalo re. তবে কেউ কথা না কয় হরে হরে হো আভাগা কেউ কথা না কয় তবে সবাই থাকে মুখ ফিরায়ে সবাই থাকে ভয়. This is a beautiful song of Rabindranath Tagore from Gitanjali, which is a beautiful visualization of how this river flows, how this one that is relentlessly executing. And this is not just about God consciousness or spirituality that I'm talking about. Even in the relative world, when there is a mission that is given to you as a scientist, as anyone that is doing something profound and useful for the whole universe, then what happens? There is total absorb absorbedness into that mission. Last night I was watching the movie of this uh, Madame Curie, a movie called Radioactivity, and and when you look at her life and how she dedicated that life and discovered this whole phenomenon, and how she realizes how that what she discovered can be useful to the world, how she went into this fields of war and healing herself, thousands of soldiers in the battlefield, because how what she has discovered on one hand was trying to cause destruction versus how it could be useful for the humanity is so inspirational. A Polish woman settling in complete foreign land and yet identifying her mission is to basically selfless service using what she discovered. This is so inspirational. We're not talking, yeah, what I'm talking about in the context of this flow is in the context of executing that mission and that inspiration that is driving you. How many hardships that you will go. It doesn't matter you got two Nobel Prizes. You doesn't matter all this stuff that she has gone through, all the hardships of the life, but never giving up that mission that I have found something that is useful for the humanity. So it happens Srutyaya cha, Patyaya cha, Katyaya cha, Nipyaya cha, Sudyaya cha, Sarasyaya cha, Nadyaya cha, Vaishantaya cha. So following this inspiration, or what we call as the command of the master, of course it is command of the master. This universal will that is acting on you to do something profoundly connecting to this universe, whether you are a scientist or whether you are anything, that level of inspiration is a higher consciousness that is flowing through you. But then you can't prevent that consciousness flowing through you with all the stuff that you have in your head. Then it won't flow, it gets stuck and it won't execute it. And you have to clean the whole process of cleaning this thing. It's just like that beautiful Krishna's flute, which deserved to be taken by the Lord and fill his own breath into that. And to do that, the bamboo has to go through so much of process. The bamboo has to be, first of all, be stiff, and it has to be ready to be cut, and then cut into different levels of pieces. It would not have it should not split. If it is split, that bamboo is thrown away. And then once you take that bamboo that is not split, then what you do, you remove the pulp through that. And when you remove that pulp through that, then there are so many bamboos that are split, thrown away. And after that pulp is taken out, then that hollow bamboo is now taken and then put in the fire so that it becomes really nice and hollow. Then at that point, lot of bamboo split, thrown away. After it goes through the fire, then you have to put the 9 holes in it. And when you put those 9 holes, lot of bamboo split, thrown away. After all of that process is done, then you pick it and then you blow into it. The right sound doesn't come, thrown away. Then only one out of those really has the perfect tune and the pitch and is picked up. And now you see a lot of people would be thinking, oh my God, How do I deserve to be a flute? Am I useless if I'm not a flute? How do I? Don't get into that kind of self pity of analysis here. What we are talking about is, it doesn't have to, the goal is not to become in the context of being picked up, or what the goal is, try to be that instrument, not the end result that we're talking about. I have to be picked up. If I'm not chosen, then I'm a useless fellow. How do I know that my prayers are getting answered? How do I know that I'm deserving all of this stuff? How do I know that I will be an instrument or not? Don't try to analyze it, understand it, just be it. Just going through this process in itself is what we're talking about. And when you go through this process, do you do you actually connect to this process and saying, oh, all these hardships that are coming, something gets thrown into my way, the hardship that is thrown into my way, yes, it is some kind of a test. And this ultimate test, the ultimate test is to lose the I and the mine and the identification with the name and the form. If all of that ultimate test is passed, and every one of us in our own lives know to what level we have actually gotten to that point. Yeah, and there is nobody else that needs to tell us. Sudhyaya cha Sarasyaya cha Nadyaya cha Vaishantaya cha. Me pause there and see if there are any questions or comments.
Sai Ram Shekhar Garu Sujata. How how can you get unstuck? Sometimes before I never used to realize I'm stuck. Sometimes now I know there's something so close, but it's holding me back. I know I'm getting stuck some places. How do you do that? How do you get unstuck?
Who is getting stuck?
Small I me, yes. So how do you get beyond that?
keep keep flowing.
Keep
keep
flowing.
keep flowing. So a river doesn't simply say, I have this big boulder now, and I have to somehow get through this boulder. Is a river thinking like that? Am I going to get through this boulder, or am I getting around this boulder, but yet I continue to flow?
Okay. Okay. Then how do you get around the stuck part?
If you truly have that your destination completely clear, like a river has, that it should merge in the ocean, so that there is absolutely no identity left of it once it merges into that ocean. It
So
doesn't matter through which it is flowing. It can be flowing through muddy waters, Sudhyayacha. It could be forming beautiful lakes, Sarasyayacha,
okay.
Srutyayacha, Pathyayacha, all those things, yeah.
So just keep trying, keep doing it.
Keep trying. Keep trying what? Keep trying. Keep trying that your goal is not about
Yeah.
your identity. Your goal is finally to be
Lose
that.
it. Yes. Thank you, Saira.
Is Tom on the call? I believe brother Tom was typing something on the chat last week 2 times, and I missed. Looks like he's not on the call today. Okay.
So, Sairam, I just it just it's very interesting how Swami communicates. So yesterday I saw this thing about serve man until you see God in all men. Can you comment on that? So I feel that I'm not there in the periphery also.
Well, I don't know in what, if I only look at what you are saying, then what he's saying is, can you look at something simply as divine and not identify as a man? So keep doing something until you lose branding something based on how it appears, because that name and form, whether you are calling a man or a woman or a rock or a bird or a fish or a tree or whatever, is a word name given to it. But in reality, that is simply a word given to that particular divine entity. In reality, it is none of that word and the form. Therefore, can you lose this identification of yourself to identify something and only justify serving because it needs to be justified to be served? Serve man, serve God in man until you only see God in the man. Means what? Do not judge anything based on its word and its identification. So the first step is not identifying with yourself. The second step is identifying something else. Can you look at a flower and simply not call it a flower? Is that possible? Do you need to call a flower to be appreciative of the divine nature of that flower? Kusuma, yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Do you need to call it a name to I asked the question, do you need to call something by a name and identify it to be able to appreciate its divine nature?
Sometimes I experience that,
But
not
do you,
all the time.
no, no, do you need to? My question is, do you need to call something by its name to appreciate its divine nature?
No,
No.
Yeah. So do you need to identify a man as a man to be able to serve the man?
no.
That is the way I am understanding what you said, if that makes sense. Right. Is that making sense?
Yep.
Sairam Shekhar, can you hear me?
No, Jnana, he says
Yes.
stop working. If you see that, that's what he means. I don't know. Once you realize that everything is God, you stop working and you meditate
Once you see he is God, you will stop working. Okay.
because you don't consider
Sorry, Kusuma. I was hearing multiple noises. Can you speak again? I apologize. Yeah.
so you don't consider when you see everybody everything as God, or without like a witness consciousness, there is no work at all. In the sense, you don't serve, but you'll be serving yourself. I don't know. That's kind of there's a very tricky statement by Baba.
I think what he say. Okay, now here is the beautiful human intellect, how it works. This is exactly what Mother Sita apparently asked Hanuman, and this is the story that Bhagavan also says. When he was testing that necklace she gave him, and he was testing each bead, and if it is saying the name of Ram, then she said, so do you really feel the name of God or the divine Rama in everything, including a bead? And he said yes. And then even his, and that is what his true nature was, Hanuman's true nature was. And then she asked the question, if that is the case, why do you serve Rama? Where is the question of service coming if you are completely identified with the context of one divine conscious? Then this is the beauty of it. When I'm identifying myself as the body, then I am a servant. That means what? In serving, I lose my identification with my body. Yes, Arun, Sairam.
Param Shekhar. So it seems like being able to see divinity outside uh, has a prerequisite, which is you first need to be able to see yourself as divine. Otherwise, it's impossible to identify that outside. The reason we put name and form outside is because we have name and form inside.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. That's very beautifully. That is why this Rudram is about constantly connecting and trying to merge the relative world and the absolute world, and the interface that is the real world. Absolutely right. The one who has not be absolutely not identifying anything else. Therefore, therefore, what it said in the Vedas, Naha Rudro, Rudramarchayet. Before unidentification of yourself, that is exactly the point. Jesus first lost identification of that ego self with that name and body. Yes, very well said. Thank you. Yes, now you're all thinking this is it. We are all doomed. We have no path forward. No, that is not the point of it. This is a constant effort of flowing. Don't give up. Because
Sairam,
Sairam, Gobi.
I think very purpose that we exist creates all the problem, because we have to serve, we have to do this, we have to learn, we don't have to do it, we have to become tool, we have to become good tool. If we don't exist, only Bhagavan exists, then the tool is good. Even bad tools sometimes are good to use. So let it be flow like that, because some are made to do certain things, some are Shullakebhyasya. So let us all be Shullakebhyasya, all Bhagavan only, right? So why this identification with the small I? We have to get rid of it, which doesn't exist. So we are trying to get rid of something which doesn't exist. That's why we always have to have all these discussions. Instead, we don't exist. Start with that. Then it becomes extremely simple. Life is so simple. It has to be simple because we all live. Because if you really look into Purusha Suktam, it clearly says only Bhagavan exists. Ashtadishta Dasangulam. If only Bhagavan exists, when Bhagavan created, where did he put us all? There is no other place other than himself. So where do we live? We live inside Bhagavan. When we live inside Bhagavan, we don't have an identification. It's only Bhagavan. It's Bhagavan just creates all these things. We just watch it, we do it, we are told we do it. Instead,
Who is
when we
the
say you have to learn, you
who
have
is
to
the we?
do,
Who is the
see, when we
we,
have,
Gobi?
that's why I'm saying we shouldn't be talking about we. We shouldn't be talking about you doing it. You shouldn't be talking about you have to learn to be this, you have to learn. Nothing. If it comes, it comes. It doesn't come. But everything is in Bhagavan. And Bhagavan gives that knowledge, that moment to some people for this. People like you who are extremely learned in a lot of things are good. People like me who are Shulla KPC. I'm very comfortable being Shulla KPC because that's how Bhagavan created this body within himself. So if you want to give knowledge, he will give knowledge like that, right? He gave knowledge to the guy who wrote Valmiki. He wrote the Ramayana. He was not knowledgeable guy at the time. So let Bhagavan do what Bhagavan's job is. Instead, when we start identifying ourselves and trying to get rid of the identification, that's where we have the worst problem in our life.
Yeah. So, but the reality is not that.
There's no reality.
So
Reality is only Bhagavan exists. That's all the reality.
I know that is absolute. Sairam, can you please mute Amma? Whoever is talking, if you're not able to focus on this, please don't join. Yes. So if that aspect.
May I say something, Brother Shekhar? This is Sonal.
Yes.
So I think the person who was speaking before meant to be as flowing as a child. I think he was talking about being in the flow. This is how I heard him. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that validation of what he said, that you understood him. I think the perspective that Gobi you are providing is absolutely the right one in the context of there is, to begin with, there is really you as identity is nothing. But then what happens is with most of us, you can say there is no relative world. It is only absolute. Why do you even bring the relativity into context? But the perspective of Veda or Vedanta is that it does not deny the relative world. It does not say that the creation doesn't exist. Only there is nothing else. Once you do that, then you have, it becomes only very simply an ideology rather than practicality. So that is where the context of what we are studying comes into picture. Okay, I open my eyes, I see the world, and who is that I that is seeing? And that is the context of going through this process. Okay, anybody else has any perspective you want to offer? Okay, then we move on to the next 5 is also bear in mind that as long as the breathing is moving in this body, there is always the movement of associated with the thought. And when there is no movement and it is complete stillness, we went through this, then it is absolute. But when the movement occurred, then that, when we are saying losing that identity, we are actually referring to that movement that occurred. In that movement, you have to be connected to the unmoving or the changeless. I hope that is how many of you are still connected? Everybody connected still here?
Yes, here we are.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So The next 5, as we talked about the situations and the trials and the tribulations, all of this, like I was mentioning before. Now this goes about the second suktam of this seventh Anuvakam. Let's look at the words. Namaha Kupyayacha Avatyayacha. I think I have been missing sharing my screen here, so please bear with me. So that for some of you who are not familiar with the word, seeing on the screen probably helps.
Thank you. I was missing it.
Yeah, I don't know if are you all okay. You are all still on the call, right? Sometimes what happens is this Zoom call in between just drops. I don't know why. So we're now looking into the next 5 yajas. Kupyayacha, Avatyayacha, Varshyayacha, Avarshyayacha, Meghyayacha, Vidyutyayacha. All these words, what they mean. Now that which is flowing now is in the wells and the pits, the rains and the oceans. Varsha means rain from the top. Ocean is the one that is on the ground. Avarshyayacha. Meghyayacha, the clouds. Vidyutyayacha, the lightning. Idhriyaya, autumn clouds. Atapyaya, scorching sun. Vatyayacha, the winds. Reshmiyayacha, the stormy downpour of the deluge. That's the appropriate words of description of it. Vastavyayacha, Vastupayacha, the wealth of relative positions and the owner of those. Now this is where it is not directly given, because all of this, when you look at the meanings of these words and how it relates to what we are talking as losing identity, what is all this to do with that? And that going, then now when we go deeper into this, in the journey of the river to the ocean, or the small I to the big I, and for those of us that still have that small I, then this losing this identity apparently seems to be an arduous process. And the above are the situations where you get stuck, and but yet you keep flowing, stuck in different places. That's what Sujata was asking. Grace showered or not trying to look for some experience. Yeah, many of us are also caught in this experience phenomena of looking for some miracles. Oh man, I've been doing this for so long. How come I have not experienced a miracle? The moment you are looking for it, then you lost it. You're stuck. And in spiritual progress, yes, people get stuck. They get some experience, they're able to listen to the universe, they're able to listen to something, then they get stuck in that place, and they use it as a way to convince themselves and others that that is the only path that you have to follow. And with all due respect, I'll say many millions of my brothers and sisters who are Satyasai devotees constantly looking for some kind of an experience or a miracle to justify the existence of the divine. Please don't do that. That is nothing to do with the divine. And then they also feel very happy that when some celebrity is putting a picture of Bhagavan Baba, etc., now suddenly they feel Bhagavan Baba is justified because Narendra Modi is his devotee. So that is, to me, that kind of trying to justify the divine consciousness to your monkey mind and your ego self because of some experience is a place where you get stuck, absolutely get stuck. Because this experience of this love in the journey of the small I to the big I, that experience is not justified by some kind of so-called miracle. It is just that your your mental intellectual awareness is now able to notice that divine vibhuti or leela that is constantly happening, but yet we get stuck. And sometimes that experience is a downpour of love, and sometimes it is electrifying presence. But notice that in which everything is shining, it is the combustible and the combustion. The sun is the combustible and the combustion. So all these different phenomena that are being described here, they are all given in the outside realm of the world that you are noticing these, but in the journey of the small I to the big I. Now, when I use the word journey, then what we are really talking about in reality, there is really no destiny, and because there is only one. I can relate to what Gobi is saying. The dhyana, the dhyatru, the dhyeya, the meditator, the meditation, and the one who is meditated upon. They are all one only. They're not different. Jnatru, Jnana, Jnaya, the knower, the knowledge, and the known. They're not separate from each other. They're not. It's all one. That is a given thing. Now, if you say that is a given thing, but yet I see all of this thing outside. When you're grounded in that one thing, then all of this actually absolutely doesn't matter. But the but there is, as long as you're breathing and feeling the breathing in yourself and you're a living being, there is movement. When that movement happens, that's when the change is happening. Chittavayavas chitkriyayuta shakhayordhvayi shakti mulaka. From that stillness of oneness where the knowledge, the known, and the knower are one, then a movement occurred. And when the movement occurred, then that's when the identity is coming. Vastavyaya cha vastupaya cha. The relative in possessions and the owner of those. Whatever you are given, you are not the owner. Allah, Malik. And with that, we are now the dimension, we are looking at the dimension of identity. I'm not saying you are the identity. You are looking at the dimension of identity because that's right in front of you. You can't deny it. You can't say that this doesn't exist. If you do that, then it only purely becomes a theory, an ideology. Yes. Any questions? Otherwise, okay. Yeah, Sudhakar, you can post your questions to everyone as well, so they will be benefited. Do you think my understanding of this Anuvakam may be characterized by the phrase incessant and constant pursuit of selfless service? I'm not justifying your perception, brother. So if that's the way you are connecting, I am nobody to say it is correct or incorrect. So it is correct. Yes. Any other questions or comments?
So I just wanted to share what my music teacher told me. So uh, when Kasturi's wife died, um, so they cremated her. On the same day, Baba asked Kasturi to give this, to be the translator for his speech. So that is the height of being an instrument, which is also a service to Bhagwan. So he is a tough master. So I don't think intellectualization is good, but to be in that state is very hard thing to do. Um, I just
Yeah.
cannot. Yeah, I just cannot imagine.
It's very hard thing to do. Again, that's what Padmanabhan was saying. It's a very hard thing to do. Is where the issue is, right? So it's a very hard thing to do because of what? That's the question.
We think we are the doer. So
Yeah, there you go. It's a very hard thing to do. Is simply a thought. But that doesn't mean that everyone should be. Oh, okay. Very good. Beautiful question by Kumar. I was hoping somebody will ask this question. But, sir, you are praying to a name and a form, and yet you are telling me to lose this identity of the name and the form. And how come this name and form is important and other name and form are unimportant, or we have to lose those, but yet you are referring to this Satya Sai Baba, which is a name, which is a form. How do I now connect myself with this whole thing called God, which has a name and a form? This is a beautiful question. I was hoping somebody will ask that question. I didn't want to bring it up because this is something much deeper level, and we should sleep on it, because and tomorrow we will get into that. And in the meantime, every one of you should really understand understand this question. This is a beautiful question. If the whole idea is to lose the identity of name and form, then where is this question of God, who has a name and a form, and that we are associating ourselves with a name and a form? We'll take up that question tomorrow, which is a beautiful question. समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु, 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 समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः जय साई राम
Sai Ram
Sai Ram.
Shekhar.
Thank you.